Today we are flipping clearance items into high-end decor. I love exploring the clearance aisles. It's like going on a treasure hunt for hidden gems. You never know what you're gonna find. Plus, who doesn't love a deep discount? Our first clearance items are from Home Goods. I found these two pieces of artwork. The thin white frame is timeless, and I loved the gold trim along the inside of these frames. The artwork itself isn't my favorite. I don't really love this shell print, but don't worry, we're gonna change that. Now let's get down to the price. Originally, these were $19.99, but they were on clearance for only $6.50. So believe it or not, we are going to take these two frames and we're going to turn it into a shadow box. So what we're gonna do is remove all of the artwork, the backing, and the glass. Once I had finished removing all of these items from the first frame, I did the exact same thing on the second. Because we are going to be gluing these frames together, I need to remove all of the staples. So I just popped all those staples out that was holding the artwork in place, and then I also removed the hook at the top. Before I glue these frames together, I need to replace the glass on the front frame. So I popped that into place. The reason why we're doing that is because once they are glued, there's no way we're gonna be able to get that glass back inside. So once that was replaced, now we can glue these frames together. Now I'm just gonna use some hot glue. So I just ran a line of hot glue around this entire frame. I added a whole lot of glue to the back. We want these frames to adhere very well together, so be generous with the hot glue. Once the glue was around the entirety of the frame, I took the second frame and placed it directly over the top. I pressed the frames firmly together so that they bonded together well. And just like that, we have created a shadow box out of two frames. I actually really love the way that this looks. The white frame is so pretty, but the double gold on the inside, that trim, is such a beautiful detail. This looks very custom. Now it's time to create some 3D art. Now my inspiration was from the Wayfair website. I found this glam 3D abstract wall art with crystals inside, and I knew that I could recreate something very similar for much less. So what I'm going to do is get some rocks, first of all, because those are a lot less expensive than crystals. I found a package of river rocks at Hobby Lobby. They came in a baggie and they were only $2.49. I selected 4 of my favorite rocks. We're going to add a gold trim around the perimeter of our rocks. We're going to do that with some gold rub and buff. So I got my rub and buff and a paper towel. I added a dab of the rub and buff to the paper towel and I wiped it along the edge of my river rock. I went around the entire edge of the rocks to make sure that the gold rub and buff was a solid saturated color. Once I had finished adding the gold rub and buff to the first rock, I moved on to the remaining 3 rocks. I did the same thing. I added a dab of rub and buff to the paper towel and then wiped it around the edge of these rocks. This is a really quick process, but it makes such a huge difference. It takes these river rocks from plain to elegant. I wanted a natural, neutral colored mat, and I remembered a couple months ago, I found this mat, once again in the clearance aisle at Hobby Lobby, and I used it for another project. I had some left over, so this is what we're going to use. The entire piece of the mat was only $3.74. What a bargain. What I'm going to do is get a self-healing mat, place my thick cream mat over the top, take the original artwork that we pulled out of the frame, place it over the top of the cream mat, get a ruler, and cut along all 4 sides of the original artwork so we got an identical size. Because we have 4 rocks, we need 4 small cutouts inside of our cream mat. So I simply just measured out 4 different squares, all identical in size, got my ruler and my X-Acto knife, and I cut out these squares so I had little windows inside of my mat. I want to add a little pizzazz behind our rocks. We're going to do that with some vellum paper. I found a package of this paper at Hobby Lobby. There were several varieties and colors of this vellum paper in this package, and I knew that this floral paper was the perfect backdrop for our artwork. I placed our cutout squares over the top of the vellum paper. I got my rotary cutter and a ruler and began to cut out the squares. These squares are about 1/4 to 1/2 inch larger than the matte squares. These vellum squares are not perfect. They just need to be larger than the window so that they can fill the space. Once all of my vellum squares were cut out, I got some hot glue. I added a line of hot glue around the opening of the squares. Then I placed my vellum square in the hot glue. I moved on to my second square. I did the same thing with the hot glue. I ran a line of hot glue along the edge and placed my paper over the top. I continued to do this process until each of the vellum squares had been hot glued in place. Now I'm going to take my original artwork and put it behind the cream matte and the vellum paper. I'm going to hot glue that together, and the reason why I'm going to do that is because you can see that this vellum paper is semi-transparent. So if there was something dark behind it, it would make this even darker, but because we have something lighter behind it, you can see it's going to highlight that design, that floral design, even better. So lucky for us, we have this leftover artwork that we're going to flip over and put behind it. Now the design on the vellum paper is very visible. Now it's time to add our rocks to each of the squares. So all I did was I added some hot glue to the back of these rocks and then placed them in the center of the vellum paper. I'm adding a fair amount of hot glue because I want to make sure that the rocks are sufficiently secured to the paper. I repeated the process of adding glue to the back of the river rocks and pressing them in the center of our squares. Now that everything is sufficiently glued together, we can place our art back inside our shadow box frame. I just popped our newly created artwork right back into the frame. And that's it. We are done with our shadow box wall art. Look at how stunning this is. It was so easy to do. By hot gluing these clearance frames together, we were able to create a very unique shadow box that was the perfect size for my rocks. It was just wide enough that they fit inside. The cream matte with the vellum paper is beautiful against our gold trimmed river rocks. This piece is timeless. It's unique, it's classic, and yet it's still one of a kind. Now I can either stand this up because it's so thick that it'll just stand on its own, or I can hang it up on the wall because I did leave the frame hook on the back. I'm going to add this artwork right here on top of my fireplace mantle to balance out the weight of the artwork that we have on this side. Over here, I'm going to add a trio of ginger jars. I've got 3 white ones in a variety of different sizes and designs. This tall one right here, I'm placing on top of that marble riser that we created as a dupe a couple weeks ago. I love the height that this gives this ginger jar in the back, and I love the material. The marble and the gold feet is a perfect addition. This fireplace display looks so beautiful. The additional artwork completes the mantle display. And can you believe we got the frame, the mat, and the vellum paper all on clearance. So just know that you can create some beautiful artwork and you can do it on a budget. Up next is another home goods clearance section treasure. Now I dug through these shelves for a very long time, and in the very back, underneath a whole lot of things, was this tray. I love the color, the shape, and the design of this tray. The tiles and the coloring is fantastic. Now, of course, there are a few flaws with this tray. There are several missing tile pieces. Some of them are cracked and chipped, but that's definitely something I can overlook because of the price. Originally, This tray was $49.99, and you can see they'd been marked down several times until I picked it up at $5. You guys, this tray is heavy duty. It is so nice. Even the cashier, when she was checking me out, was surprised that it was only $5. So I know that I got a great deal with this tray. Now, we need to come up with a solution to replace the missing tiles. I had to think long and hard, and I wandered about Hobby Lobby for a very long time until I spotted this bag of rectangular wood pieces. This package had a variety of different sizes, and some of these rectangles fit perfectly in place of the missing tile. The larger wood pieces needed to be trimmed to be the perfect size. So what I did was I got a ruler and my X-Acto knife, and I trimmed these wood rectangles to size. This wood is thin, so the X-Acto knife was able to cut through it very easily. I was able to get the perfect size as replacements for each of my tiles. Now that our tiles are cut, we need to paint them with a faux finish. Now the tiles on the tray have a nice sheen to it, so I needed to have something in my paint that gave it a little bit of a shine. I have this metallic pearlescent paint that will give it the shine that I need. I also am using a white craft paint and a satin driftwood acrylic paint. I added a bit of the three of these paints to a styrofoam plate and mixed them together. So I had various shades of tan, cream, and white. Then I painted these wood rectangles in this paint. What I like about the combination of this paint is the various shades that I'm getting. These tiles are not a solid color, so getting a unique paint tone on each of these wood tiles makes them look more natural and similar to the original tiles on the tray. Once each of the wood rectangles had been painted, I let them dry for 1 hour. Before we add our wood tiles onto the tray, I'm going to paint the tray itself where the missing tiles are white. Right now it's kind of brown, and there might be a possibility of this brown peeking in between the wood tiles, so I'm going to paint it white as an extra precaution. Once each of these areas had been painted white in the craft paint, I let it dry for an hour. Now I can adhere my tiles to the tray. I'm going to be using some E6000 because I want these tiles to be permanently fixed to the tray. So I added the E6000 to the back of each one of the wood rectangles and placed them in the correct spot on my tray. I made sure that these tiles had a decent amount of the E6000 glue on the back of them. I want them to adhere well to the tray. Once I had each of my wood rectangles glued to my tray, I let it dry overnight. It is really hard to decipher which one of these tiles is original and which one of these is wood. They blend in so nicely. I am delighted with the outcome. We are going to embellish this tray just a little bit further, and we're going to add some feet to the bottom. I love adding feet to the bottom of my pieces because it gives it an extra detail, some color and height. To create our feet, we are going to be using some mini wood dowel caps. I purchased 2 packages of these at Hobby Lobby. I needed 2 packages because I need 4 feet. I love the intricate details on these dowel caps, so they're a perfect choice to turn into feet. I took these caps outside and I'm spraying them in some gold Rust-Oleum spray paint. Once everything had been saturated in the paint, I let it dry for 1 hour. Then I flipped these caps over and I painted the opposite side. Once the tops and the sides had been spray painted in the gold spray paint, I let it dry for an additional hour. To adhere these gold feet to my tray, we are once again going to be using the E6000. I added the E6000 to the tops of these caps and then placed them on each of the 4 corners. Once all 4 of my feet had been glued to the tray, I let it dry for 3 hours. And here we are with our finished tray. Look at how beautiful this looks. This looks like it would be $49.99. And can you tell where the wood tiles are and where the regular tiles are? You would never be able to know. Look at that, you guys. It looks brand new with the addition of the feet. I love the feet on there. It's such a pretty detail. It's subtle, but it adds so much. And can you believe we paid $5 for this tray? $5, you guys. And by simply repairing those pieces that were missing, it looks extremely high-end. Now, this is definitely a standalone piece, but what we're gonna do is add a flower arrangement to the top. The tray gives this display elegance, class, and height. I am delighted with the way this tray looks. The clearance section is a great place to find unique treasures that need a little bit of tweaking to make them impeccable pieces of home decor. I would say that the majority of stores have one section for the clearance items, but some stores really keep you on your toes and make you go for a scavenger hunt. When I was at Hobby Lobby, I just happened to be walking through the fabric section and I found this teeny spot that had some clearance items on it. There was a cute little beaded garland that was the perfect size and shape. And yes, each one of you are so awesome. That saying made me smile, so I appreciated that on there. And the best part of this beaded garland was the price. It was only $2.69. Now this little beaded garland is a little rustic for my taste, so we're going to change it. The first thing I need to do is cut off the twine tassel. So I just got my scissors and I cut the twine that was holding everything together and then pulled it apart. I did leave the twine that was attaching the tassel to the beaded garland because that will come in handy later on. So now that the tassel is removed, I'm going to take my beaded garland outside, and this time I'm going to spray it in some Krylon Regal Blue spray paint. I made sure that the top and the sides of the wood beads were covered in the spray paint. I also painted the spool. Once this side had been completely covered in the blue spray paint, I let it dry for 20 minutes. Then I flipped it over and I spray painted the other side. Once again, I made sure that the paint had sufficiently covered each part of the beaded garland and the spool. Once everything had been coated in the paint, I let it dry for 1 hour. The reason why I'm using this Regal Blue spray paint is because we are going to theme our beaded garland in a nautical theme. So this paint color is the perfect backdrop. So now that everything is painted, we are going to create a new tassel. We're going to do that with some white ribbon. I had several segments of this ribbon that were left over from previous projects, so this is a great place to use them. To create our tassel, what I'm going to do is use one of the squares that were left over from this project. So I took my ribbon and I wrapped it around this square. I wrapped several pieces of the ribbon around the square so that my tassel would be nice and thick. Once I had enough ribbon on my square, I got a segment of this ribbon, threaded it underneath the ribbon, and then tied a knot at the top. Now I can pull the ribbon off the square. Then I got a pair of sharp material scissors and cut the ribbon at the bottom. Next, I folded my ribbon in half, got another ribbon segment, and wrapped it around the top of the ribbon, and then tied this into a knot. Remember that little piece of twine that we left at the bottom? Well, this is where it's going to come in handy. What I did was I took that little segment that was left over and wrapped it around my new tassel and then tied it into a knot. And now my brand new tassel is attached to the garland. The spool portion on this beaded garland needs to be embellished, and I want to do that with some ribbon. And guess what? I found some ribbon in the clearance aisle at Hobby Lobby. It goes perfectly with my nautical theme, and this ribbon came in at the low price of $1.24. I wrapped this ribbon around the center of the spool to get the correct size. Then I cut it. I grabbed some hot glue, I added hot glue to the spool, and then pressed the ribbon into the hot glue. I went around the entirety of the spool until the ribbon was sufficiently glued down. I'm gonna add one more little embellishment. Okay, do you remember when we created this pillow? Right now it's on the center of my bed. I added a few of these lace flowers with a pearl detail in the center to this pillow covering. I did have a few left over after I was finished with this project. So what I'm gonna do is take one of these lacy flowers, add some hot glue to the back, and then press it in the center of the ribbon. I liked the spool so much that I wanted to repeat it down below on our tassel. So I took this ribbon and I folded it in half, added some hot glue so it would stay folded in half. Once the ribbon had been glued to the tassel, I got another one of those pretty little lace flowers, added hot glue to the back, and pressed it to the center of the ribbon. Now we are all done transforming our cute clearance tassel garland. It definitely gives off a nautical theme with the blue and white and the stripes. I just simply love it. It's very summery. Now what I do love about tassel garlands is that they are so versatile. You can hang them from the tops of jars, anything that has a lid on it. You can put it around a candle. You can drape it on your accessories just to add a pretty little pop of color. And you can customize your garland in the color that fits perfectly with your color scheme. Using clearance items in your home decor is a great way to help you save money. Plus, you can find some unique, one-of-a-kind pieces in that clearance section. These clearance items often provide a great value and allow you to experiment with different styles without breaking the bank. I love all the pieces that we transformed today. I think each one of them look very expensive. They are one of a kind, classic, timeless, but best of all, affordable. You can definitely live beautifully on a budget. You just need a little bit of creativity and some elbow grease. Hopefully you got some inspiration or some ideas today that will help you to create your own affordable decor. If you like this video and want to see more like it, I would love to have you subscribe so I can share those with you. Thank you so much for watching.